Earth Thunder, the sixth and final book in Patrick Tilley's legendary AMTRAK Wars series, isn't just another post-apocalyptic tale. This is the ultimate showdown between two civilizations locked in a battle that will determine the future of North America itself. You know that feeling when you've been following an epic story for years and you finally reach the moment where everything comes together? That's exactly what we're dealing with here. Patrick Tilley spent 5 books building toward this explosive finale, and trust me, he doesn't hold back. We're talking about a story that combines Native American mysticism, advanced technology, political intrigue and warfare on a scale that will leave you breathless. But here's what makes this summary different from anything else you'll find online. We're not just going to tell you what happens, we're going to explore why this book matters, what makes it a masterpiece of science fiction storytelling, and most importantly, what lessons it holds for our own world. Whether you're a long-time fan of the series or someone discovering Tilley's work for the first time, you're about to understand why Earth Thunder stands as one of the most powerful conclusions in science fiction literature. So buckle up, because we're about to journey into a world where ancient wisdom meets futuristic warfare, where personal relationships determine the fate of nations, and where the very soul of America hangs in the balance. Earth Thunder represents the culminating masterpiece of Patrick Tilley's ambitious AMTRAK Wars saga, a series that redefined post-apocalyptic science fiction throughout the 1980s and 1990s. This sixth installment doesn't merely conclude the story Tilley began years earlier. It transforms everything readers thought they understood about his meticulously crafted world into something far more profound and challenging. Set in a future North America devastated by nuclear war, the AMTRAK Wars universe presents a continent divided between the Underground Federation, descendants of pre-war America, and the surface-dwelling mutes, Native American tribes who have adapted to the radioactive wasteland above. Throughout 5 previous volumes, Tilley constructed an intricate narrative exploring themes of cultural identity, technological hubris, and the cyclical nature of human conflict. Earth Thunder arrives at the moment when these opposing forces can no longer coexist through uneasy truces and temporary alliances. The Federation's underground cities face resource depletion and political upheaval, while the Plains tribes struggle with internal divisions and the growing influence of mysterious powers from the Eastern Territories. Steve Brickman, the series' central protagonist, finds himself caught between worlds he can never fully belong to, carrying secrets that could either bridge the gap between civilizations or destroy them both entirely. What distinguishes Earth Thunder from typical series conclusions is Tilley's refusal to provide simple resolutions to complex problems. Instead, he presents readers with a narrative that acknowledges the messy realities of cultural reconciliation, the price of technological advancement, and the personal cost of choosing between conflicting loyalties. This isn't a book about good triumphing over evil, it's a sophisticated examination of how different definitions of progress and survival can lead honourable people towards seemingly inevitable conflict. Earth Thunder opens with the Federation teetering on the edge of collapse. Years of warfare against the surface tribes have drained resources, while internal political struggles threaten to tear apart the underground civilization from within. The Council of Elders faces mounting pressure from military hawks demanding decisive action against the mutes, even as moderate voices argue for diplomatic solutions that seem increasingly impossible to achieve. Steve Brickman returns to this chaos carrying knowledge that could change everything. His experiences among the Plains tribes have revealed the existence of powerful forces manipulating events from behind the scenes, forces that view both Federation and mute civilizations as obstacles to their own mysterious agenda. But sharing this information means exposing secrets about his own transformation, secrets that could brand him as a traitor to everything the Federation represents. Meanwhile, on the surface, the tribal confederations face their own crisis of leadership. Traditional ways of life clash with the demands of modern warfare, while younger warriors question whether the old customs can survive in a world where survival often depends on adopting enemy technologies and tactics. The mystical powers that have long guided tribal decision-making seem to be shifting, pointing toward changes that even the wisest shamans struggle to interpret. As both civilizations prepare for what appears to be a final confrontation, individual characters find their personal relationships tested by larger political forces. Loyalties built over years crumble under the weight of conflicting duties, while unlikely alliances form between former enemies who recognize common threats. The line between hero and villain becomes increasingly blurred as characters make desperate choices in impossible situations. The opening sequence establishes the Federation's deteriorating situation through a series of interconnected crises that demonstrate how years of conflict have weakened the underground civilization's foundations. Resource shortages force difficult decisions about which settlements can continue receiving support, while equipment failures in critical systems reveal the long-term costs of sustained warfare. Political factions within the Council of Elders engage in increasingly bitter disputes over strategy, with hardliners demanding total war against the surface tribes, while moderates argue for negotiations that seem doomed to fail. These internal divisions create opportunities for outside manipulation, as mysterious agents work to influence Federation policy through carefully orchestrated incidents designed to increase fear and paranoia among the population. Steve Brickman's return to Federation territory triggers a complex investigation into his activities among the Plains tribes, forcing him to navigate between his duty to his original civilization and his loyalty to people who have become family to him. His debriefings reveal disturbing information about external forces manipulating both sides of the conflict, but his credibility is questioned by officials who view his transformation with suspicion. The psychological pressure of maintaining multiple identities while concealing crucial secrets takes a severe toll on his relationships with both Federation colleagues and tribal allies. His attempts to serve as a bridge between civilizations instead isolate him from both groups, leaving him increasingly alone as events spiral beyond anyone's control. The tribal confederations face their own leadership crisis, as traditional power structures prove inadequate for coordinating resistance against Federation military technology. Younger warriors challenge elder authority, arguing that survival requires abandoning customs that make them vulnerable to enemy advantages. These generational conflicts weaken tribal unity at precisely the moment when coordination becomes most crucial for survival. The mystical guidance that has long informed tribal decision-making becomes contradictory and unclear, with different shamans receiving visions that point towards incompatible courses of action. This spiritual confusion reflects deeper questions about whether traditional ways of life can survive in a world transformed by technological warfare. The discovery of external manipulation forces leaders from both civilizations to reconsider their assumptions about the nature of their conflict and the identity of their true enemies. Evidence emerges revealing how outside forces have systematically worked to prevent cooperation between Federation and tribal societies, viewing their potential alliance as a threat to larger strategic objectives. This revelation comes too late to prevent the outbreak of major hostilities, but creates possibilities for unexpected alliances between former enemies who recognise common threats. The challenge becomes whether mutual recognition of manipulation can overcome years of accumulated mistrust and violence. The climactic confrontations reveal how technological advantage alone cannot determine the outcome of conflicts rooted in fundamental cultural differences and competing visions of the future. Military victories prove meaningless when they cannot address underlying questions about how different societies can coexist in shared territory with limited resources. The resolution requires acknowledgement that neither civilization can achieve its objectives through the complete defeat of the other. But finding alternatives to total war requires sacrifices that challenge core beliefs about identity and survival. The final sequences demonstrate that lasting peace requires transformation of both societies rather than victory of one over the other. The first crucial lesson Earth Thunder offers concerns the dangerous cycle of escalation that occurs when civilizations view their conflicts in zero-sum terms. Throughout the narrative, both Federation and tribal leaders make the fundamental error of believing that their survival requires the complete defeat or elimination of their opponents. This mindset creates a self-reinforcing cycle, where defensive measures taken by one side appear as aggressive threats to the other, leading to escalating responses that make peaceful resolution increasingly difficult to achieve. The book demonstrates how this pattern can persist, even when both sides would benefit from cooperation, simply because the framework of total competition makes it impossible to recognise mutual interests. Real-world applications of this insight extend to international relations, corporate competition, and even personal conflicts where zero-sum thinking prevents recognition of win-win solutions. The second major takeaway addresses the vulnerability of isolated communities to external manipulation when they lack awareness of larger strategic contexts. Both Federation and tribal societies become pawns in games played by forces they don't fully understand, because their focus on immediate threats prevents them from recognising how their conflicts serve other parties' interests. This manipulation succeeds precisely because it exploits existing tensions rather than creating artificial ones, making it difficult for the manipulated parties to distinguish between genuine grievances and artificially inflamed disputes. The book suggests that communities can protect themselves from such manipulation only by maintaining broader perspectives that allow them to question whether their conflicts truly serve their own interests or advance someone else's agenda. Technology emerges as a double-edged tool that can either bridge cultural divides or deepen them, depending on how it's implemented and controlled. The Federation's technological advantages initially appear to guarantee military superiority, but these same technologies create dependencies that become vulnerabilities when resources become scarce or when opponents develop countermeasures. More importantly, the book shows how technological solutions alone cannot address conflicts rooted in cultural differences and competing values. True resolution requires understanding between peoples, not simply superior firepower or more advanced equipment. This insight applies particularly to modern situations where technological solutions are proposed for problems that are fundamentally human in nature. The fourth lesson concerns the critical importance of authentic cultural exchange versus superficial accommodation when different societies attempt to coexist. Characters who succeed in bridging cultural divides do so by genuinely understanding and respecting different ways of thinking, not by simply adopting surface elements of other cultures. This authentic exchange requires vulnerability and willingness to be changed by the encounter, rather than seeking to maintain original identity unchanged while gaining strategic advantages. The book demonstrates that meaningful cultural bridge building is a transformative process that changes all parties involved, not a one-way process where one culture adopts elements from another without reciprocal influence. Leadership responsibility becomes a central theme as characters discover that holding power during crisis situations requires making decisions that may contradict personal beliefs or desires. Effective leaders in the story must balance competing demands from their constituencies while maintaining long-term perspectives that extend beyond immediate political pressures. The book shows how leadership failure often occurs not through lack of courage or intelligence, but through inability to communicate difficult truths to followers who prefer comfortable illusions. This challenge becomes particularly acute when leaders must advocate for compromises that require their societies to abandon cherished beliefs or accept uncomfortable realities about their situations. The sixth takeaway explores how personal relationships across cultural boundaries can become both bridges for understanding and sources of unbearable tension when larger conflicts escalate. Characters who form deep connections with people from opposing sides find these relationships tested by political pressures that make neutrality impossible. The book demonstrates that such relationships can either become forces for peace when they create mutual understanding, or sources of additional pain when political circumstances force people to choose between personal loyalty and group survival. The key insight is that cross-cultural relationships require explicit acknowledgement of these tensions rather than assumptions that personal affection can transcend political realities. Environmental factors emerge as crucial determinants of social stability and conflict, particularly in resource-scarce situations where scarcity forces difficult choices about priorities and allocation. The book shows how environmental pressures can either encourage cooperation through shared recognition of common challenges, or intensify competition when groups view resources as limited quantities that must be fought over rather than problems that might be solved through collaborative innovation. Understanding environmental context becomes essential for predicting whether scarcity will lead to conflict or cooperation in specific situations. The final key lesson concerns the ultimate futility of seeking permanent solutions to conflicts rooted in fundamental human nature and competing values. The book suggests that lasting peace requires ongoing commitment to dialogue and compromise rather than definitive victories that eliminate opposition. This perspective challenges common assumptions about conflict resolution and suggests that sustainable peace requires institutional frameworks that can manage ongoing tensions rather than eliminate them entirely. Earth Thunder stands as more than just the conclusion to Patrick Tilley's ambitious science fiction series. It represents a mature meditation on the complexities of human conflict and the possibilities for reconciliation in a world where different cultures must somehow find ways to coexist despite fundamental differences in values, beliefs, and ways of life. The book refuses to offer simple solutions to complex problems, instead presenting readers with a nuanced exploration of how personal relationships, political pressures, and historical grievances interact to create situations where good intentions often lead to tragic outcomes. What makes this final volume particularly powerful is its unflinching examination of how external manipulation can exploit existing tensions to prevent the kind of understanding that might lead to peaceful coexistence. Tilley's insight that conflicts often serve interests beyond those of the immediate participants offers a sobering perspective on contemporary global politics and suggests that resolution requires broader awareness of these larger contexts. The book's treatment of technology as a tool that can either bridge or deepen cultural divides provides relevant insights for our own era of rapid technological change. Perhaps most importantly, Earth Thunder demonstrates that meaningful peace requires transformation of all parties involved rather than victory of one side over another. This message resonates particularly strongly in our current global context, where similar conflicts between traditional and modern values, different cultural approaches to progress, and competing definitions of survival continue to shape international relations. Tilley's final installment in the AMTRAK Wars saga offers both a satisfying conclusion to an epic story and a thoughtful contribution to ongoing discussions about how different peoples can share limited resources and contested territories without destroying each other in the process.